Two more players into the transfer portal, and you know what that means, folks? Two more roster spots.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I am your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider. Check out my work there as well. On today's show, we're going to get into the basketball team with another catastrophic loss on Tuesday night. That's two losses that we're going to talk about. Bowl projections for the football team. Where should BC end up, and what are the projections showing in a trend that we have seen? And finally, we're going to kick things off by talking about the transfer portal. Before that, let me tell you, FanDuel, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. So, Tuesday, the transfer portal, we have seen, three guys enter the transfer portal. Thomas Castellanos, we had Jalen Cheek, and we had Sione Hala, linebacker. Now on Tuesday, two more players entered the transfer portal. Well, three. One of them's a walk-on, but we can quickly mention him at first. Now the walk-on was Jack Brandon, who is a walk-on quarterback. Never played. Never was going to play. Maybe he can go find I don't know if it's FCS or even below that, just a place to play. I'm sure he's probably has his degree by now. He's leaving. Not a big deal. It doesn't really matter. The first one that announced, is a name that I think a lot of Boston College fans know, is Cole Batson. Now, you know him from last year. He played and started in 8 games. He was a starting safety for BC for a while. Then he got hurt at the end of the season, and we hadn't seen him. Then Bill O'Brien took over, and we didn't see him at all. I think he played 9 snaps this season, and they were only against Duquesne, and then mop-up duty against Duquesne, and mop-up duty against UNC. The injury came at the worst spot, and BC had quite a few safeties that really showed that they deserved to be on the field, and they beat them out. That's the truth of it. You had Carter Davis, you had Omar Thornton, and KP Price. These guys all deserve to play, and Cole Batson played his heart out, his heart out on the field. He had his moments. He also struggled with some tackling, and he wasn't the best in coverage. He wasn't super fast. So he got his degree, and he moved on. This was not a surprise to me. Like, if you were to ask me before the season started, the off season started, to make a list, I wouldn't put it out there right now. And I'm not going to tell you who's on my list, because it's not fair, because there may be a kid I get wrong, and I'm like outing him as someone who I would think could transfer. But I had him on my list, but just because, he's an upperclassman, just wasn't playing. It made a lot of sense for him to enter the transfer portal. So he's one. The second transfer is not a surprise either. He is not an upperclass. Well, I think he might actually be an upperclassman. But it was his first year with BC, and it was not a surprise either, which was wide receiver Jaden McGowan. Jaden McGowan just got here this last spring. He transferred in from Vanderbilt, where he had 42 catches last year. A lot of hype about this kid. They BC beat out South Carolina to get him. They flipped him, I believe, from South Carolina. He was rumored to be one of the fastest players on the team. I'm going to be honest with you, folks. I've been to a lot of practices. I did not see a ton out of him. And it's not he just didn't he didn't stick out. Like, even Jerron Bradley, who has not done much this season, watching him, he had his big plays. Luke McLaughlin had big plays. Like, you Matt Reagan, like Danny Edgehill. You saw every practice. It's just the way it works, right? You sit with the twos, you see that some of them make big plays. I gotta tell you, with Jaden McGowan, I don't think I ever saw him make a play. It just didn't seem like he fit. It just was not a good fit for him here. I think his most infamous moment will be the fact that he is an absolute cheat code in NCAA 25, which is funny because he didn't do anything. You know what? You want to know what his ending stats were for BC? 2 catches for 0 yards. That you can't make up. and I believe both were just screens. And we saw it with BC this year. Screen passes don't really work. And they tried to get him the ball a couple times, but that was it. Now he played special teams, and I thought at times, and that was part of his rep when he got here, was that he was good at kick returns, and I thought he had some good kick returns, but for some reason they kept deferring to Jonathan Montague every time they kicked, and you didn't get to see what McGowan could do on a consistent basis, so that never happened. You know, if he can work with Vanderbilt, I'm sure he can find a program that's going to work well for him. It just didn't work here. It was just not the right fit. And so he's gone. You get another scholarship. So that's now 5 scholarships that you have just in transfers. And I don't think they're done. I don't want to, again, project out who's going to leave, but I think the week goes on. You have those conversations with Bill O'Brien. I believe they do a lot of exit interviews in college football where they're talking about like what next year is going to look like, what um, their role might be, or what they're going to be battling for. And some of them might just decide this isn't going to be the right place. Now, for O'Brien's sake, he has said all along that he wants to try to retain as many of the guys as he can. So, will there be a mass exodus? A huge amount that have not announced yet. I don't think there will be, but I wouldn't be surprised. We're at 5 now. I think there could be another 5 to 6, 7. That wouldn't surprise me. Now they have to have, so the way it works, December 9th is the official opening of the transfer portal, and it goes all the way to December 28th. Now, most of the BC Bowl projections have bowls around the 28th. So all a player has to do is enter the portal at that time. So technically, a player, if they wanted to, could play in the bowl. Like say if it's the military bowl, it's on the 28th. I believe they could play in that bowl game, finish the game, and then just go run and enter the transfer portal. That being said, I think a lot of players won't do that because if you waited so long, you run the risk of potential landing spots being filled. They need to be proactive and do it in the front end, because the last thing you want to do is like you have a couple schools that you're thinking of and you don't make your move, you wait, and then they fill those spots, and then all of a sudden you're out of luck. Saw Brian Dona 247 tweet that some kids don't even know it yet, but they're going to enter the transfer portal and have already played their last game of college football. It's tough for some kids. Like, they're going to go and they're going to end up not doing anything. Look at Emmett Moorhead from last year. I thought he'd find a spot. He gets to Old Dominion. He does absolutely nothing. I think he was like the 5th string quarterback. You never know what's going to happen out there. So sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Now, in our second segment, I brought up bowls, not like cereal bowls, but bowls, like, end of the season bowls. Let's talk about what BC is projected to go to and which ones I would love to see them go to. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Hate the team you drafted in season-long fantasy but want to stay in the action? I actually like my team, but I've hated some of mine in the past. Now, introducing Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent, and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social daily fantasy movement at Better Together. It's great because it provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. Makes you realize that daily fantasy sports is fun alone, but like a lot of things, it's better with friends. So what you got to do is download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code Locked On for a chance to play in a contest with or against me. Because winning is fun alone, but it's better together. So check that out on your App Store and download it today. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for subscribing to our channel. And if you like my podcast, I've told you before, check out Locked On Patriots. It's been a huge roller coaster of a season with a huge offseason coming up for the Patriots. You're going to want to hear their thoughts on what's going on with Gerard Mayo in this program. Check out Locked On Patriots on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, we're in bowl season. Boston College finishes the season off 7-5. I was arguing with someone you may know about whether the season has been a success or not. And if you don't think this is a success, I don't know what to tell you because the expectations going into the season, you look at the betting odds. FanDuel had it at 4.5 wins. They win 7 with the potential for 8. They almost double what they were projected to win. I don't know if anyone had higher expectations for that. I know you started the season off 4-1, but you know, this is Boston College. You got to take incremental steps, and I thought this was a great season for them. 7-5. Yes, you'd love to get that 8th win. Yes, you look at games like UVA and say they could have had 9, but this is a good step in the right direction, especially when you lost your quarterback and the one that you thought would be taking you to that next level, and he wasn't it, but you had somebody even better. Um, Frustrating that you didn't get to them earlier, but more exciting that you now know going forward that you have a guy that can do that. So I think that's something just to think about. Now, looking at the bowl projections, there's a few bowls that seem to be popping up. And the two main bowls that I've seen projected to BC are the Military Bowl in Annapolis, Maryland on December 28th, and the Pinstripe Bowl, which we all know is at Yankee Stadium, and I believe that's also on December 28th. Now, we'll start with the Military Bowl. The Military Bowl was the bowl that Boston College was supposed to play a couple years ago in 2021, where they had COVID and had to forfeit, or not forfeit, cancel the game. ECU fans will say forfeit, and against the ECU Pirates because they didn't have enough healthy players to play. I'm glad that if they do this, it probably won't be against ECU because I don't need to listen to those fans again. But the projections have two military academies, either Army or Navy, for Boston College to play against. Not the biggest fan. I said this before on one of our projections show earlier this month. You know, the thing about playing a military academy is it's going to be like an like 8 to 10 possession game where they're just going to run and run and run and run and run and basically just try to run clock as much as they can. In a regular season game, that's fine. I don't care. Like sometimes you get those games and it's fun. In a bowl game, I find it horribly boring. And I don't want to play against Army. I don't want to play against Navy. Especially don't want to play against Army because they're good. Um, and they're going to have their full arsenal because no one transfers from Army. It's not that I'm afraid of them. I just want to play a team that's exciting. And I don't find either of those teams in a bowl game to be exciting. So I no thank you for the Military Bowl. But all the buzz I've heard a ton of buzz. Rich Thompson, I know, whether I think he knows what he's doing or not in terms of this, says he has a source that says it's the Military Bowl. Not sure if that's true or not, but that could be the case. Now, the other bowl game that has been popping up a lot is the Pinstripe Bowl, where this is one BC has played twice in the last 10 years. They, in 2014, they played Penn State in the game. One of the most upset games I've ever been watching in my life. I remember I was skiing in Colorado. We had just finished and got home in time to watch it. I was at a ski house, and when Mike Knoll missed that extra point, I threw myself on the floor and screamed. Uh, so, I'm a writer now, but back then I was a fan. That was not fun. And then the last time they played in the Pinstripe Bowl, I heard was one of the most miserable fan experiences that they've ever had. That was against Iowa, and that was the game. It was 2017 or 2017. AJ Dillon was there. He could not get his footing on anything and was basically looked like he was skating on ice through the whole game. So weather-wise, that place is a bit of a mess. But I've heard that this year it's not going to be a night game. That's actually a day game. So maybe that'll help a little bit with the weather. New York in just late December, it's so unpredictable. You could get snow. It could be 50 degrees. Who the heck knows? But I honestly would think that would be better. Now, the teams I've seen BC projected, I've seen Nebraska, which is very interesting because that's a team BC has never played before. I think they were on a major skid at the end of the year too. And they finished 7-5. So that would be a team that you could play against. They would pack that place. Nebraska fans travel very well everywhere they go. And that would be interesting. But the most interesting projection I've seen, and I forget who, I don't, I want to give, it was Brett Murphy of Action Network, had the Pinstripe Bowl against Michigan. Now, BC and Michigan, they have a history. They also, you know, obviously Michigan is on a real high right now because they just beat Ohio State, their rival. They're also the defending national champions. Think about that. You've gone that program has gone from beating, was Texas and Washington in the playoffs last year to win the national championship to potentially playing Boston College in a bowl game in New York. That is quite the dive off of in terms of prestige. But that would be a fun one. Now Michigan is also they're having a lot of changes. They just fired their offensive coordinator. Um, I don't think I've seen any major players. Will Johnson, their star cornerback, I'm assuming is probably going to opt out for the NFL draft. But I mean, that would be fun. Like, I'm all into fun. And what a way to end! Like, think about that, right? Like, you're talking cherry on top, end of your season type of game. To beat the defending national champions, to get your 8th win, the first time you've done that in 15 years, in the Pinstripe Bowl, a bowl that you lost twice, that would be the absolute cherry on top for Bill O'Brien to excise some ghosts and do some things with BC that you just didn't expect. Because, of course, Michigan, even though they've won, 7 games, they also are just loaded with blue chip players, right? They've got lots of talent on that team. So to beat them, that would be quite the accomplishment for O'Brien. And so, I think when you're looking at bowls, that's the one I like the most. Now, I say all this, and there's also the possibility that something crazy happens. I've seen the First Responders Bowl on one. I think that's the bowl if like BC gets knocked out of the pecking order, which could happen because it's BC and they didn't win enough games to protect themselves. Um, they could also get knocked out to some just random bowl. The Gasparilla Bowl is another one I've seen thrown around. But I think the Pinstripe Bowl seems like the best choice. And again, the weather's the worst, but New York around the holidays can be fun. What says you? Who do you want? Where do you want to play and who do you want to play against? Are you an Army and Navy fan or like you're into that? That's fine. Put it in the comment section. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Now, in our final segment, we've been talking about the success of football. I have been purposely avoiding basketball because it's a death knell of my podcast ratings. But I'm going to talk about them next because they're embarrassing and they're a big hot mess right now, and I'll explain why. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You're watching Thursday Night Football. You're hanging at your house. You're looking for those odds. You can head it on to FanDuel. It changes throughout the game. It rides the waves of the momentum of the game, and you think things are going to change. You go on FanDuel, you can get there self-covered. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place you place your bets. It's so easy to use. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. And I talk about football mostly on this podcast because I talk about what people want to talk about. And I tell you, I know my basketball, but I also know that when I talk about basketball, it's the dregs in terms of hits and people listening to it. So I don't talk about it because if you turn on the TV and look at Conti Forum, it's very clear that not many people want to talk about it because not many people are showing up to these games because the team isn't doing very well. After starting the season off 6-1, winning the Cayman Island Classic by beating Boise State, who is a 37 net ranking, BC comes back and embarrasses themselves by losing to Dartmouth, who was, I think, Ken Palm rated like 340 near the bottom of the country. They let up 17 3-pointers in that class. Their defense in that game. Their defense was an absolute mess. They could not close out. They couldn't do anything. And as Earl Grant always has his team doing, the offense was a complete disaster as well. They cannot do anything right now. Their offense is bad, the defense is bad. And just looking at who they've brought in, it doesn't seem like they have enough talent to really compete. I'm just going to say that right off the bat because the next game that they just played on Tuesday, they got their doors absolutely blown off by South Carolina, a team that was only supposed to be like a 3-point favorite in this game. They were not close in this at all. Like they were tied 6-6, but then South Carolina just went on this huge run. BC couldn't shoot. They shot 2 for 11 from 3-point range. They could not defend, and they don't have anybody that you can look at and say, that's their scorer. They got some guys that can make some shots here and there, but if you were to ask me, who is their go-to scorer? I would tell you, I have no clue. And I've watched them enough. Like Chad Venning was their top scorer this game, but if you go back 2 games, he was all over the place and couldn't stop turning over the ball. You look at Elijah Strong. He's regressed over the last couple of games, and he's struggling. You putting out Dion Brown. Dion Brown was supposed to be your crown jewel scorer, the guy that you snagged from UMBC, probably your best transfer recruit that you brought in. And he does not look like an ACC level player right now. He is really struggling through his first 9 games, and maybe he'll figure things out. Right now, he's not. And I am very worried about the future of this program. Um, you know, you have winnable games in front of you, but you also have those WTF bye games that you could still continue to lose, like Farley Dickinson or Stonehill or whoever else that they've got coming up. They got Wake Forest. Wake Forest is going to blow the doors off of them. You know, earlier this month, I thought, like, looking at the way that they were playing, that, like, maybe, when they got to the ACC level part of the schedule, they'd skip, drift by the skin of their teeth and win like 3 or 4 games in the ACC, and you'd be like, okay, this season was a waste. I'm at the point right now where I don't see them winning any of them. Like there's some bad ACC teams that maybe they'll get by, but like this team is just not playing well at all. And if they play like this in ACC level, ACC games, they're going to lose a lot. And I'm not this is the point of this episode is not for me to rant and rave about Earl Grant and firing Earl Grant and all that. I'm sure you guys all have your thoughts about that, but I'm very concerned about the end of this year and where this program is heading because Earl Grant now is in year 4. He is below 500. This year is going to be a big hot mess, and I'm not sure how they straighten things out. I look at what they did in this offseason. They lost their entire their entire roster to the transfer portal. Did not do a good job, I think, in backfilling with guys that can play for you. They whiffed on the guy that I think they probably, put the biggest package together to get, which is Dion Brown. And it's again, like it's going to continue to be a reciprocal impact on the fan interest because right now students, I think that I saw someone saying that they had student T-shirts today. And the new thing that I've heard about is that students just walk in, get their T-shirts with their ticket stubs that they've already had season tickets for, and just leave. So they're paying for the seats, they just don't ever go. And this is a big problem. And I don't blame the students. It's a horrible product to watch right now. But you're showing empty stadiums. Conti Morgue is going to be this case, unless opposing fans start packing it. It's going to be dreary this year, folks. And that's why I'm not talking about it much because people do not want to listen to me gripe and moan about the basketball program for this is like what, year 15 since Al Skinner left or whatever. It's been a mess for a while. I don't know how they fix it. I do say that if they do make changes, I trust Blake James because he seems to know what he's doing. But will they make a change? It depends on what happens. We'll have to wait and see. Now, on tomorrow's show, more transfer portal talk. We'll talk about everything and anything going on with the football team. Thank you all for listening to Locked On Boston College. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Check me out on Eagle Insider. Right now, there's a 50% off deal. If you missed the 75% off, you're hearing about it now. You can get 50% off. That's still pretty good. Check it out. Get yourself signed up. Get your VIP access. You don't want to miss that out. And we'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Your team every day.